I'm proud to be a founding board member of Public Assets Institute and a past board chair. I'm the Associate Director of Voices for Vermont's Children, an organization that promotes public policy that enhances the lives of children and youth in Vermont. When we began Public Assets Institute 10 years ago, we could see clearly the need for information and analysis we planned to provide, but we really had no idea how important this effort would be to our state and the people who live here. Public Assets Institute has changed the conversation in Vermont and has helped policymakers to clarify the kind of state we want to be and how we want to treat the people who live here. The bottom line is that Public Assets Institute has shined a light onto complex data so that ordinary Vermonters can not only understand what data means, but they can also use it to decide how state policies are affecting people, and to talk to policymakers about the good or harm that those policies are creating. Public Assets Institute has helped policymakers to see the impact of their decisions and to clarify what they want for results. Public Assets Institute has helped us to be a better state and has contributed to our commitment to each other and to productive public dialogue. We have a reputation in Vermont for being committed to civil discourse and to treating each other with dignity. I believe that Public Assets Institute has enhanced that reputation and given us the tools to keep that high standard for civil discourse. I am proud to be here today, 10 years later, recommitting to not only providing information and analysis, but also to developing public policy proposals that will lead to a Vermont that works for all. Here are just a few examples of Public Assets work over the past 10 years. The 2004 Citizens Guide to School Funding that they did with Voices for Vermont's Children. The updated version is still the definitive guide for those who want to understand the basics of how Act 68 works. In 2006, they made headlines with a single-page report on their discovery that the legislature and the governor had been unwittingly shortchanging the education fund, driving up property taxes by $25 million. The legislature and the governor acted to correct the situation. In 2007, they were the first to dig through IRS data and point out that for 2 decades, while the same number of people move in and out of Vermont each year, those moving in have higher incomes, nearly 25% higher, debunking the idea that higher income people have been leaving Vermont. In 2008, they took to the road with their summer speaking tour, spending an entire day at each of the 5 Vermont communities, speaking at Rotary clubs, doing seminars on school funding for legislators and school officials, and meetings with the local press and community leaders. A chance to talk about the issues communities are facing and to discuss the Institute's findings. They continue these tours each summer. In 2009, they launched VermontTransparency.org with the Ethan Allen Institute, demonstrating that 2 organizations that disagree on most things can work together on things they agree on for the benefit of Vermonters. Vermont Transparency still provides the only place legislators, the press, and the public can easily access key pieces of state fiscal information. Also in 2009, they began publishing monthly job briefs, single-page reports released on the same day that the VDOL releases monthly employment numbers. It was the first regular independent analysis of these monthly numbers in Vermont. The next edition will be out tomorrow, right, Jack and Sarah? In 2010, they debunked another myth. Pre-K expansion was too expensive for the state to take on. Their 3-page report found that the cost of expansion, $13.6 million, would be 1/5 of previous unsubstantiated estimates. The legislature expanded pre-K. In 2011, they worked with the Vermont Business Roundtable on a member survey on health insurance and cost. The report was published the following year, showing that nearly 80% of VBR member employees work for employers who spent 10% or more of payroll on health insurance. In 2012, in another of their one-page reports, they show that the income taxes Vermonters actually pay at 3.2% of adjusted gross income put Vermont in the middle of the pack nationally, not at the high end, as is commonly reported. Last year, they worked again with Voices and a coalition of advocates to maintain the state's existing earned income tax credit so that 50,000 Vermont children and their low-income working parents would not be worse off with a tax hike that would have cut their household income. Today, Public Assets Institute is celebrating 10 years of contributing to important public policy decisions in Vermont and is looking ahead to developing proposals that will lead to a Vermont that works for all. I can't wait to see the results. Thank you.
I'm Karen Lafayette, and I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Vermont Low Income Advocacy Council. VILIAC has represented the interests of low-income Vermonters in the state for 42 years now, giving a voice to the poor, the elderly, those living with disabilities, and low-income working families in the policy-making arena of state government. Every day I see the results of what we do, and I am convinced that our work helps to build a Vermont that works for all. I am pleased to be here today standing with Public Assets Institute to celebrate their first 10 years and also looking ahead to their next 10 years. I appreciate their work, and I know that their renewed commitment to Vermont, a Vermont that works for all, will help us to be a better state. The challenge for many organizations like mine is that we are focused on the work we are doing and the services we provide and the advocacy. So it is difficult and the resources are slim for any or each of us to gather information and do the analysis we need to do to promote the right policy decisions, to make key investments, and to keep an eye on the big picture. We need public assets to give us this context, as well as the information and analysis, and that is exactly what they do. We all know that budget and policy and tax policy sets our state's priorities. We all know somebody has to pay attention and understand the whole revenue and budget picture. That is why, for the past 10 years, I have been thankful for Public Assets' work. They are the experts behind the scenes that we have depended on to find the relevant data and make it understandable. When I was in the legislature for my first 8 years in this building, I understood the value and the necessity of expert research, analysis, policy development, and disseminating information. Public Assets has become that resource for all of us in this state. Last session, a number of us traveled around the state with Public Assets, armed with detailed data and policy options for this state to pursue, speaking with editorial boards, groups, and organizations to open up the dialogue in the state on policy decisions being made that affect the lives of all Vermonters. Public Assets looks ahead and helps anticipate the key questions, the debate that will be happening, and the information that is needed to help make that debate productive and dignified. I'm glad to be here today with Public Assets, celebrating that work and celebrating their future commitment to Vermont. I look forward to continuing to work with them to improve the lives of all Vermont citizens, especially the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Karen and Sheila. I'm Paul Silo. I'm the President and Executive Director of Public Assets Institute. And I would thank you all for being here today as we launch our second decade campaign for a Vermont that works for all. When we hear about the state budget, taxes, or the economy, it's usually from the legislature, the governor, or the business community. Who's missing from that list is the average Vermonter. That's who Public Assets Institute is thinking about when we analyze state fiscal and economic policy. We gather the facts and explain what they mean in a way that ordinary people can understand. We do this because we fundamentally believe that our government should be using the people's money for the people's well-being. To that end, For the past 10 years, we've been giving Vermonters the facts and information they need to speak up in the public debate. Over the next 10 years, we are committed to continuing our work, gathering relevant facts and making them understandable to Vermonters. And we also will be working to connect what we learn about the state's fiscal and economic conditions with policy ideas that can move us toward becoming a state that works for all. We'll still be making charts like these. Right now, our best summary of where Vermont stands is in our State of Working Vermont 2013 report, which is a book of charts. The story that report tells isn't rosy, but the good news is that the story can change. Vermont is where it is because of choices we've made as a state and policies we've set. And we can move toward a Vermont that works for all by making new choices and developing policies that get the state back on track. We know that if we continue to provide accurate, understandable information and analysis, Vermont legislators, advocates, the media, community leaders will use this information to inform the state's choices. We also know that often the available policy options end up being a choice between the lesser of two evils. That's why we are committing to working on developing new policy options. Because of our Second Decade campaign, we will have the resources and staffing we need to take the information and analysis we produce and use it to develop policy options that will show us who we can become as a state, not limit us to choosing the state we don't want to be. I look forward to working with legislators, advocates, and all Vermonters to chart our course toward a Vermont that works for all. Now I'd like to introduce our board chair, Larry Mandel.
And for any of you who are wondering, the last speaker. I am Larry Mandel. I'm the chair of the board of Public Assets Institute. I joined this board because I thought public assets was one of the most important institutions in the state of Vermont. It serves people, it serves all Vermonters and provides the data and information for advocates, the legislature, and the administration. I'm proud to be here to launch the Second Decade campaign and recommit to a Vermont that works for all. You could be asking, what's the Second Decade campaign? Well, it's several things. First, it's a fundraising campaign to raise $300,000 over 3 years to increase the capacity for research and analysis that Public Assets Institute is known for. The second is to develop policy options based on research that can make Vermont a state that works for all. And I'm happy, as far as the campaign is going, it's going very well. We've raised over $100,000 already, and we're 1/3 to our goal of $300,000. The campaign is also about hearing from Vermonters. We want to have a public conversation about Vermont, a Vermont that works for all. Towards that goal, we'll be traveling this summer and fall, sharing research, listening to Vermonters, and developing proposals. Something that hasn't been at the heart of what we've done before. We've mostly been responding, but now, by listening to Vermonters, we'll be able to work together to develop proposals to, again, reach this state that works for all Vermonters. The third leg of the campaign is to bring these proposals to Montpelier, to show policymakers not only issues, but how to work together to get that Vermont that works for all. We all know this won't be easy, but we have time to do this, and making this new commitment to bringing proposals to Vermont will allow us and the people we work with to make the changes that are necessary to make Vermont the place that we all want it to be. We're eager to get started. We're looking forward to going across the state and joining with people around the state. What you can do and what people can do is to join us in these conversations. Be part of the discussion about what you would like Vermont to be and what citizens would like Vermont to be. You could also join us on our mailing list to get updates and publications and campaign news. And you can also make a gift or a 3-year pledge to the campaign to help us achieve our goals, to have the resources that we need to make this campaign completely fulfilled. So I'm pleased to be with you.